Hi, my name is Cy Porter, and this is another free tutorial on creative writing, which is part of my effort to get the word out about my own age of internet multimedia storytelling at solimation.com. And the topic for this video is working with story ideas. So examples, you have Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. This is a story that's built more around a premise. The premise being love conquers all, even death. So the stories stories from a century to a few centuries ago were more this kind of story. And then an example of a story that reflects the kinds of stories being told today. Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein. This is based on what was at the time an original story idea. You have a scientist who uses breakthrough technology to build a human, and this creates a monster. So that is the story idea. Now, both of these stories, Romeo and Juliet and the original Frankenstein, they both are built on story ideas, and they both are built on, both of them have a premise. But the Frankenstein is more a story created from a story idea, and Romeo and Juliet is more a story created from a premise. So when you're working, before you actually start writing the story, ask yourself, is this, if it's more of like what you would think of as a drama that is built around a premise, then you're going to write it differently. If you're working with an original story idea, so you have a rich man who is kidnapped, and the wife receives the ransom note, but the thing is that the wife hated her husband anyway, so this is going to change the way she might deal with this situation. That's a story idea. So if you're just walking along, minding your own business, and you're struck with a story idea, now that story idea that is gonna stay in your brain and is gonna be the reason you're gonna start putting pen to paper is going to be the magnet that all these other ideas are going to start going to. And a story idea, when you have an original story idea, that's a very magical thing. That's something that is going to very much improve your chances of success and enjoyment in writing the story. I would like to quickly add that Romeo and Juliet does have an original story idea. Two youths from feuding families fall in love with tragic consequences, and that the original Frankenstein does have a premise. Tampering with Mother Nature breeds monsters. One reason that I bring up the topic of the story idea is that in my own studies about writing, when I've looked into premise, to me it seemed a little bit after the fact and not very useful as someone in the process of writing. I feel like this whole, the whole school of premise is more held up by people who are critics of writing and not actually writers themselves. Whereas it's been more useful for me while I'm writing to look at the original story idea because this is something that's helpful to me while I'm actually writing, not after the story is written. So I would be very surprised if Shelley sat down one day and said, I have a premise. I'm going to write a story about how tampering with Mother Nature breeds monsters. And then to go from there and to write Frankenstein, I really doubt it worked that way. What I think happened is that she might have heard some news about some science technology and she gets an idea. What if someone uses technology to try to make an artificial human? and and so what happens is that she gets creative with the reality she is in, the world around her, recombines some things and is working creatively with ideas, comes up with an original story idea, and she's good to go. And that's more the way the creative process works, not backwards, not to where you look at emerging themes, and you're not when you're writing a story, you're following something, you're following the story idea, and that's what's guiding you along to write the story. The premise is not going to guide you along to write the story. The premise is useful to keep in mind about themes that are working in the story. That's useful to keep in mind, but what is going to lead you along the way is the original story idea. That's going to be the horse that is going to drive your cart.
I hope my tutorials are useful to you. I post them to get the word out about a story I'm working on at solomation.com. I post free episodes of my illustrated story, so if you have a few minutes, please check it out. Thank you, and I hope your next writing session is a good one.
So the premise is very important. I'll get to that time and again in later tutorials, but what I'm proposing is that if you want to write a really good story, start with a really good story idea. And so exercise 1, begin journaling story ideas. So every time you have any kind of story idea whatsoever, write it down. And it could be, just, they're usually one-liners, let's see, blind society lives millions of years underground without light. One of them finds his way to the surface. I'm just giving you an idea about how to write these story ideas down. But just, for now, think about it on that level, not about taking it to where you're actually going to start writing the story. You're just writing the story ideas. And as you collect story ideas and begin to work creatively with story ideas, if you can practice and become better at doing that, it will redouble in your efforts as you actually write these stories out, and you'll have more options about what to write about. And if you begin writing down story ideas, that is the way to eventually come to, the lightning bolt out of the sky, great story idea that when you get it, you're like, I have to write this story. And the nice thing about working with story ideas is that you don't have to go to the work of writing all these stories out. You're just writing the story ideas. So it's really very easy because all you're doing is when you have a story idea, you write it down. It takes a couple of minutes, and it gives your creative mind all kinds of imagery and different scenarios to kind of play with as you think about how one story idea may work out. One story idea can work out, countless ways. So this is a really good place as a writer to be. Thinking creatively, looking around in your own environment, listen to the news, hear things the people around you are talking about, what you read, what you see around you. They can give you ideas about what kind of story can come out of it. You can hear about how someone got a divorce, and this could be, you could say, wow, well, but what if this were the situation? And that could be the story idea. Me personally, I like story ideas to be original, but that is not necessary whatsoever. A story idea could be, the Titanic, or Pearl Harbor, or you might have heard about, in the news, you heard about the rescue of 3 people from a well. It isn't an original story idea, but the thing is that it is an interesting and compelling story idea. Chances are that if you come up with an interesting and compelling story idea, the battle is half won. You're much more guaranteed to write an interesting and compelling story. And also, a story idea, it does not need to be limited to one idea about one event that happens. When you look at Narnia, Narnia is built on the ideas of a magical place, and that generated all these different stories and story ideas. But basically, the the story idea is the story concept is about this magical place where interesting events are bound to happen due to the wonderful nature of this created place. So problems occur in a story when the story ideas operating in that story are mixed up or convoluted. So if you have like a vampire who gets into politics to save a galactic warfare due to if you're trying to write many stories at once, you're working against yourself. So if you can clarify and simplify your story ideas into, a finely tuned, simple, exact group of ideas operating in that story, that is going to make it successful. So that's about it for this video, and please remember, you and I are in a partnership, so if you want me to put more of these free tutorials out there, then please take the time to check out my creative efforts at solomation.com, and I hope you have a great day.